So today's topic is going to be the non-reality of time. I bring this chart up each time because we're looking at what does and does not exist. And I find that I'm actually kind of consistently playing with this and coming, I added just today, I added holiness and specialness. Your holiness exists. You are the Christ, right? Specialness does not exist. That's like the ego thing. Ego thing is specialness. Holiness is completely outside of that. So we're talking about really four great illusions. We're talking about other kinds of illusions, but time, the world, the body, and the ego are all illusions, but they're also tools. So we're in a body, in a world, in time, and we have to use these bodies and time and the world in order to educate ourselves, in order to grow, in order to go deeper into understanding the truth of what's really going on, because it's going to be very easy to just get caught up in the world and the body and time and think that that somehow or another constitutes reality. That does not constitute reality, not at all, because first of all, each of these things will end. For example, when the body dies, time ends, or so it seems, for you, whoever it is that dies, and the world ends because you're not in this world anymore, and the ego cannot get into heaven. That's completely exempt. So then we're waking up into another dimension. This is where this gets really, really exciting. It's not just what the eyes see, it's not just what's external, it's not just what's on the outside, but there's a much deeper reason that we are here. We're really here to, the Course says, to remember your self with a capital S for self. Remember who you really are. So from that standpoint, as we've said before, this really just means that where you are now is we're all caught within a dream. We're dreaming the world. And we dream this world in concert. It's not just that any one of us does it. We're all doing it as a collective. So then we dream about different societies. Something under the culture that we're born into is going to seem very real to us. And then other cultures are going to seem more difficult. Other countries, it may seem very difficult. Other races, it's going to seem very difficult. And then what we get to learn is it doesn't make any difference about any of those kind of things. But if we decide that it does make a difference, if we decide that your system of government is wrong and our system of government that I work with is the right one, now we've got a problem, all right? So we've got to work it out so we understand. The Course in Miracles actually says that there's only one of us here. Now, when it says that there's only one of us here, it really means that there's only one mind. That one mind is the Christ mind, the mind of Christ that we all share. As it is now, we're broken off into separate segments of little minds seeking to remember the greater mind. And that's the only job you have in a certain sense. The only real job we have in this world is one of remembering is means to put the pieces back together again, remember who you really are, not as a body in a world and time, but as spirit. And that may seem like a frightening idea to the ego. It should seem frightening to the ego because the ego is exempt from this process. But then that's where we thought it before. That's the dreaming part of it. Ego is the dreaming part of it. So awakening from that, which is really a kind of insanity, and coming back to wholeness once again. So it's interesting, even when we talk about time, we tend to think of time in terms of days and minutes and seconds and hours, and what we've broken everything into as a measurement, as a measuring devices we use in this world. So if you were in a different world, so to speak, you wouldn't even have the same measuring device. But a day, one of our days on Jupiter would be 9 hours and 56 minutes of Earth time. but a day on Mercury would be 176 days of Earth life. Depends upon how fast the planet is turning as it goes around the sun, right? So all of this is relative. It's very relative. And the more that we know, science is telling us about the universe, it now seems pretty clear that the universe is expanding, and it is expanding, and you may well know, faster than the speed of light, which means that even if you could travel at the speed of light, you'd never get to the end of the universe. It just wouldn't be possible. The Course distinguishes eternity from time, of course, and says this is a passage you may very well be familiar with. Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny, mad idea, at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. So we should have laughed at this idea. This is a silly, ridiculous idea. And the silly, ridiculous idea is that it's possible to be separated from God. It's not possible to be separate from God, but just for a moment, this piece of us that we call the ego had this thought that maybe it'd be possible to think a thought outside of the mind of God. And so we fell into this form, if you will. In his beginning, did this thought become a serious idea, possible of both atonement, suspense, and effect. Together, we can laugh them both away and understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity. It's a joke to think that time can come to circumvent eternity, which means there is no time. So time is this place where you all got divided up. I think it's very difficult for us to understand what eternity is, simply because we are used to having measuring devices to help us understand time. We have clocks, digital clocks, and again, we can break things up into different pieces. But what happens if there's no pieces to break it up into? What happens when there's no past and there's no future? And we get down to just this eternal now, as Eckhart Tolle would say, that's where we all really live. So if we could get back into that moment, just into that moment, that'd be a really interesting place to be, where we're not getting caught in guilt, we're not getting fearful of the future, but we're just in this centered place, which is where many of the religions, particularly Buddhism, Taoism, is asking us to try to step into, simply because it's a peaceful place. Because the other dimensions of time are fearful, or guilt-ridden, or both. One of the two or both. So time is actually where the story is. It's where the soap opera is. It's where the dream is. It's where the drama is being played out in one's life or in the news. So as we watch the news, then that's the drama that's being played out on the big stage, right? And then we've all got the dramas of our lives, and it's being played out there, but then it's also being played out on different levels, family levels, etc. Right? So time, according to the Course, is a central aspect of the ego's illusionary world of separation. Heaven is eternal. And so, but the ego lives in a separated world. It's easy to understand that because of what we were just talking about. We have a past, a present, and a future. That's the very simplest level of separation. Time appears to be linear, past, present, future. It is, in fact, all contained in a tiny instant, which is already past. Now, the Course in Miracles at this point is beginning to sound like science fiction. And it's kind of hard to think, but it's not science fiction, but it sounds like it because it's kind of hard for us to get our minds around that idea. At the same time that that's true, I think that most all of us will think that that we agree that there's some kind of a truth there, that we can see that truth. And in the next slide, you're going to see this as well. In truth, it never happened at all, which means time is an illusion, or a fantasy, or again, a dream. Time, of course, in Miracles is a trick. It's a sleight of hand. It's a vast illusion in which figures come and go as if by magic. Yet there is a plan behind appearances that does not change. The script is written. I think this is one of the most interesting parts of the course. There's a plan behind appearances. So even though we may not understand that plan, what we're really trying to do as we learn the course is become more and more aware of what the plan is, just as we begin to apply these principles of the course. And also to understand that it's written. There's a place in the course, we'll be talking about at the beginning a little bit, where it says there are no accidents. Chance plays no part in God's universe. And quote, those who are to meet will meet. And sometimes, you're going to have experiences in life where that will be really true. I mean, you'll be just like, something will become so obviously you wind up in the same place at the same time with someone who you didn't plan on meeting. But like once my wife and I were in Seattle, Washington, standing on line at a restaurant waiting to be seated. And we turned and looked at the people who were standing behind us and next to us were neighbors here in New York. They weren't really close neighbors, but they live only 2, maybe 3 miles from here. And the lady in particular worked in the same school that my wife did. So what is the chances of that? That's just one little illustration. There's so many of these where it's like this is not an accident. There's something about it that gives itself away. And what we're looking for is the meaning of those incidences. Why do we meet? Kind of people that we meet, what do we have to learn in these meetings? Going on with this quote, when experience will come to your end, your doubting has been set. So you will see the journey from the point at which it ended, looking back upon it and imagining make it once again, reviewing mentally what has gone by. And then there's this quote, from no accident or chance is possible in the universe as God created, outside of which is nothing. I think the more we kind of maybe look back at the course of our lives, we'll see that things had kind of, for some reason, to go the way they did. And this is true even of the accidents, the things that we weren't planning on, and the things that we would not have really wanted to have happened. And then those two, there's a meaning in them. Your holiness reverses all the laws of the world. So holiness is now being substituted across from specialness. So there's a holiness that you have, it's always been yours, which is a part of your Christ mind. Reverses all the laws of the world. It's like saying that Christ mind reverses the laws of the world. So we can change things just by changing our minds, for example, by loving whatever it is that we're seeing or experiencing, or by practice patience, for example, that can alter time, that can seem to alter time. It is beyond every restriction of time, space, distance, and limits of any time. Your holiness is totally unlimited in its power because it establishes you as a son of God at one with the mind of his creator. So this is what we're looking to do. We're looking to get back this mind, the mind of the Son of God. That's where our holiness is. The alternative to that, as I said earlier, is specialness. That's what you really felt about. So we've been studying this, but also talking about learning devices. Just want to remind you that as we go through this particular class, we're going to be talking about the mind, the body, time, and the world. And it's interesting that some things, the mind is a constant. Bodies are going to disappear, time disappear, worlds disappear. But these are the learning devices that we use to help wake us up. And there are more than these, but these are the primary ones we're looking at. Ego can also learn, even though its maker can be misguided. Egos may be going after power, fame, money, physical pleasures, things like that, that will just lead it nowhere. Even if you get those things, then you get those things and you realize, well, that's kind of empty. It's just things. It's just stuff. There's no love here. There's no real life there. So the miracle is one of these learning devices, the lessons that need for time establishes an out-of-time interval, and there's the usual laws of time. In this sense, it is timeless. It's principle 47 from the 50 miracles principles. So the wrong-minded use of time seeks to preserve the past with guilt, projecting fear of punishment in the future, but it will be hell, overlooking the present and the experience of now. So Eckhart Tolle, as you know, is very big on now, but so this is a very important point in Buddhism and so many other teachings as well, which is to put the insanity of the mind aside, the wrong mind, which is always to looking to maybe do something in time, to be special in time. If you're looking to be special in time, that's going to get you nowhere but special, which is not going to wake you up. The only awakening is to get back to holiness of who we really are. So the right-minded use of time, the right-minded use is to undo the ego by forgiving the past, by letting the past go. The past was whatever it was for each and every one of us. And we may have guilt about that. The best thing you can do with that is to let it be what it was. And just, it was there, it was a part of your lesson. You actually chose that. You might have thought, I never chose that. But obviously you did choose at least parts of that because that's been your experience. If it's your experience, then it was a choice. The world of time then disappeared. In order to understand the teaching learning plan of salvation, it's necessary to grasp the concept of time that the Course sets forth. Atonement corrects illusions, not truth. Therefore, it corrects what never was. That's a really interesting. What do you mean? It corrects what never was. Whatever it was, if it's something that I'm making up in my mind, if it's some guilt that I'm holding on to, some shame that I'm holding on to, something like that, that's a part of what never was, because you can actually never be separated from wholeness again, except within context of an illusion. Now, illusions aren't realities. So all we're letting go of what never was. That was the illusion, the fantasy. We're remembering who we are in truth. That's what's really important. So Jesus in the wilderness remembers who he is. All the Course is asking us to do is to do what Jesus did. That is to remember who we are in truth, not within the context of the dream, not in terms of who we make ourselves out to be, not in terms of some kind of specialness, but just in terms of who we are in our purity as a part of the mind of God, which is holy or holiness. That's why I introduced the topic of holiness and specialness. The will of God is entirely apart from time, so is all reality being of him. It's entirely apart from the time because what we have in time, again, is to review quickly, is we have guilt and fear. And guilt and fear are not a part of eternity. They're not a part of reality. Guilt is in the past. That's a goner. That God does not see your past. God knows nothing of your quote so-called sins. They don't count. They were just a part of the dream. But the ego is going to want to hold on to those things because that's part of what makes the ego real. And also the same thing is true for fear. What's going to happen when I get sick? What happens when I don't have money? What happens when I die? And all those questions like that. If I've got fear around that, then that's also an illusion. Because the truth is, of course, the Americans are saying there's nothing to be afraid of. The truth is not frightening. Heaven is not frightening. Your reality as a son of God is not frightening. It's quite the opposite of that. It's a blissful experience. It's a blessed experience to remember who we are in truth. The instant the idea of separation entered the mind of God's Son, and that same instant was God's answer to give it. This is very important. So the very moment this thought of separation occurs to, we'll blame it here on Adam, all right? right? The idea of separation. It's possible to think of thought outside of the mind of God. The moment Adam has that experience in that same instant is God's answer given. You are my beloved son, who I'm well pleased. That's Jesus speaking, God speaking of Jesus. So in time, the Course says, this happened very long ago. In reality, it never happened at all. So this is the metaphysics, but it's strange, it's difficult, but if you begin to intuit or understand it, we're going a long way in unraveling the whole complexity of consciousness. Of course, these miracles are both beginnings and endings, and so they alter the temporal order. There are always affirmations of rebirth, which seems to go back, but really goes forward. It's kind of what you're talking about, Leslie. They undo the past in the present and thus release the future. Undo the past in the present, releasing the future. Beautiful. So miracles make one minds one in God. They depend upon cooperation because the Son is the sum of all that God created. Miracles there reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. They're laws of time. The laws of time, for example, would include things like that things decay in time. All things decay in time. One form turns into another form. A plant grows up and winter comes down, disappears, new earth comes up after the plant. The same with our bodies, they disappear in time. There's a time that we can't seem to get beyond a certain life is extended a little bit more now through the medical science, but it's not a lot, it's not a lot. Nobody's really living much past 100, and if you do, the quality of life is probably not very high. The revelation transcends time, having nothing to do with time at all. The revelation includes all those wonderful ahas, and now I see it, oh, I get it, and now it makes sense, and the pieces begin to fall together. Let's admit, the Course is not easy in the sense in which it's kind of complex. By that I mean, this big book and all that, but it's really all laid out very carefully. And the truth is true. And the more those pieces begin to come together, the more the truth is going to come through for you. So then the Course says, I would not forget my function because I remember myself. See, this is a capital S. I was talking about this earlier. I cannot fulfill my function if I forget it. Unless I fulfill my function, I will not experience the joy that God intends for me. So this is, I fulfill my function. So we're here for a reason. And the Course is also saying you chose to be here. You have a function to fulfill. And it's a really good idea to fulfill that function. And that function is really pretty simple. I mean, it's not to do some great thing in the world. Your function is to wake up. That's the job, to remember yourself. Wake up, remember who you are, and be that. And that is just love. That's just being the love of who you are, just being whole and letting go of that ego thing which attacks and condemns and looks for problems and complains all the time. If that's the world that I'm living in, that's not a happy world. So I can let that unhappy world go. And that's what it means by undoing the ego. I see the ego. I see its play. I see how it's working. And I just say, I don't like playing this game. Let me stop playing this game. Time and eternity, the Course says, are both in your mind and will conflict until you perceive time solely as a means to regain eternity. So this is the function of time. The function of time is to help us to regain eternity. So we're just here for a while. We must decide how we will use our time. I want to be focusing on this more next week, the purpose of time. You cannot do this as long as you believe that anything happening to you is caused by factors outside yourself. You must learn that time is solely at your disposal. Nothing in this world can take the responsibility from you. This is again, this is a very important point in the course. Chapter 21, first paragraph. Right? It's all about accepting the responsibility. Only you can change your mind. And seeing how only you can change your mind, only you can change the way you see, and therefore only you can change the world. Not that you're doing anything at all in the world, except that you are changing your perspective on the world. But by changing your perspective on the world, you're doing something magnificent. You're participating in the miracle of seeing correctly instead of seeing the insanity. The world itself, there's so much of it that would like to see and amplify the insanity. Talk about, look at all this insanity that's going on. Well, right, there's a lot of insanity that's going on. But let me forget about that for a moment and just look at the peace of God. Let me go there. Let me go in. Let me get quiet. That's one of the reasons that I like Buddhism so much and Taoism, because they're really perspectives that focus on the inner mind, patience, for example, just being patient. Patient is a very important quality of time. Patience really just means that I'm not frustrated about what's going on in the world. I can allow things to be what they are. So you cannot violate God's law in your imagination, but you cannot escape from them. They were established for your protection and are as inviolate as your safety. This isn't important. This is kind of what I was saying, but I want to focus on a little bit more. The miracle mind minimizes the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of sonship appear to involve almost endless time. However, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perspective. So here's the horizontal. The horizontal, we've got past, we've got future, and we're clicking along, going down the road of time, bit by bit, little bit by little bit. I mean, anyway, but the Course is asking us to just move here right into here. And Christ says, I live here. I live, as the Course repeatedly says, God knows you only now. Now. God knows you right now. God knows nothing of your past. Doesn't matter what your past was, because that was a dream. And the dream is a dream. When God's not interested in interpreting your dream. Because God knows you as the son or daughter of God that you are. That's all he knows. That's the prodigal son story. When the son comes home, all the father wants to do is to greet him. And the father doesn't say a word about where he went, what he did. None of that matters, because that was nothing. The only thing that matters is to be awake and alive and attentive and authentic and honest now, right now, right here in this centered vertical place. That's where Christ is. So the ego body is a prisoner of time. It loses strength and vitality in time. It takes time for the body to heal. A miracle, however, can occur in a holy instant. It can occur the moment that is perceived. The mind changes, the mind changes. But since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, it would not be useful if we're bound by laws that govern the error it aims to correct. Right? In other words, it doesn't take time to change your mind. It could seem that way, but that doesn't have to be true at all. That can be done in an instant. A miracle healing can occur in an instant. So can a mind be healed in an instant by forgiveness, insight, or revelation? All that forgiveness means, it just means letting something go. It just means let that go. I'm not holding on to this. I have no pain in me in regard to this concept, the idea, or something that I think you did. You didn't do anything to me, unless it seems as though you did, and then I held on to something. If I held on to something that was painful in the past, and I can't let that thing go, then I'm still in an unforgiving state, and I might have to let that go. Sometimes when someone will lose a mate, for example. Uh, my wife, first husband was an alcoholic. And when he died, which was a number of years ago now, she said that the moment he passed, all of that energy and that attack thought, all of that stuff just disappeared. And the only thing that she could think about was that this had been somebody that she had loved. Right? That was all that mattered. Nothing didn't, what the story didn't matter. Right? So the Course says is to return our whole mind to God. The Holy Spirit uses time but does not believe in it. Coming from God, he uses everything for good, but does not believe in what is not true. That's the simple. Since the Holy Spirit is in your mind can also believe only what is true. Let's see, as we kind of, not mean, as we kind of let go of the ego and we kind of kick it out of the mind, then all we've got left is the love. That's the only thing. The only thing that was left, as I just said, the only thing left after he was gone was the love that was once there. That was the only thing that mattered. So the Holy Spirit can speak only for this because he speaks for God. He tells you to return your whole mind to God because it never left him. If it has never left him, we need only perceive it as it is his to be returned. Full awareness of the atonement is the recognition that the separation never occurred. That's the second time that the separation never occurred. The ego cannot prevail against this because it's an explicit statement that the ego never occurred. Separation, the whole idea of the separation, the whole idea of the ego are intimately connected. There couldn't be an ego without the thought of separation. So a holy instant is an instant outside of time, which we choose forgiveness instead of guilt, miracle instead of greed, the holy instant instead of the ego, the experience of our little willingness to live in the present. That's it. That's all, just living in the present, which opens into eternity, rather than holding on to the past and fearing the future, which keeps us in hell. The holy instant opens us to the experience of the real world. The real world is a state of mind, which through total forgiveness, the work of perception, is released from the projection of guilt, replace the thought. The mind which changes, not the world, and see through the vision of Christ, which we bless and them from death. We repeatedly said that time is a learning device to be abolished when it's no longer useful. See, all these things are learning devices. Time's a learning device, the body's a learning device, all these experiences that we're going through, they're learning devices. They're things that are trying to help us to wake up. Holy Spirit, who speaks for God in time, also know that time is meaningless, again, because it's where the dream is. He reminds you of this every passing moment of time, because it is a special function to return you to eternity and to remain, to bless your creations. That you notice this says the special function is to return you to eternity. So if it's a matter of returning you to eternity, that means you always actually have been in eternity. The only thing that is returning to eternity is your memory of eternity, which the Course in Miracles is going to say you can actually never lose. What's happened again is just that you are dreaming that you have lost. You're thinking that it's possible to have lost it. But how can you lose eternity? You can't do it except as a fantasy or except as a dream.